All right, looks like we're live. Hello, everybody. It is good to see you this evening. Let me get my stuff all moved over here so I can stay focused on you guys. I got all my monitors up. It's good to see you. Tonight, we're going to be talking about sales, entrepreneurship, and ADHD. And of course, this music is brought to you by the great folks at StreamYard. And thank you for your media assets that I get to use all the time. I get nothing for promoting them. I just think they've got a really cool piece of software. So if you are trying to do a podcast or a video cast like this, I really recommend check them out. I can put a link, but you can look them up. They're pretty awesome what they do. So let's go ahead and wind that music down. It is good to see you. There is, I've got some really cool stuff to share with you tonight, and that is there's a link that exists. Let me see if I can shut this thing off. There we go. There's a link that exists between the entrepreneurship and sales and ADHD. It was actually really, really fascinating, and we're going to get into that here this evening. But and I got some cool resources to share with you too. But for those of you who are interested, and I'm just going to go ahead and put this link up in while I'm thinking of it, because I will forget about it. If I don't do it now, I will forget about it later. But the link to the community, which right now doesn't cost a thing, and that is over at our friends at school, and they are really they've got a really cool platform. So I'm really excited. That I'm just letting you know that it is free now, and it will not always be that way. So the link is in there. It's school.com/strategic boardroom. In fact, just so you know, my plan is I'm building out an entire 90-day course. Actually, it's probably going to be a 12-week course, not exactly 90 days, but it's going to be 12 weeks. And the way that it's going to be built out over there at the community is it's gonna walk you through from no sales, no business, all the way through, and I will guarantee you by the end of that 12 weeks that you will have a customer, a paying customer by the end of that time. And I'm so confident, and I will give you your money back if you are not happy with it. So anyway, not really here to promote that. I'm just here to talk to you tonight about sales, entrepreneurship, ADHD. For some of you who've been following me for more than a few minutes, you know, right now I'm pursuing my PhD in organizational psychology. And I got to tell you, I geek out on just certain things. Like, so all of this stuff here that I put out. Now, for those of you who know, I'm a book nerd, and I like to read, specifically love to get my hands on books. And where are my readers out there? Do I have any readers? I got some comments popping up. Let's see here. Let's say, hey there, ADHD. Hold on one second. Let me just show you up there. I have ADHD, and my parents got divorced. Do you know why? I don't know why. Probably lots of reasons. Unfortunately, that sucks. Not to make light of that, but that does suck. I know my parents didn't make it either, and I will tell you that my bride and we really struggled through just trying to make things work out in our marriage. And fortunately, we did make it, and we are better than ever. And obviously, we are terrible at social distancing because we have a daughter, a 3-year-old daughter, and we were very, very lucky to get on the other side of that. So, so the interesting thing that I find is that as I'm going through the course that I have in organizational psychology, and I ended up printing out a bunch of stuff. So I printed off all these extra things, and I'm not even I don't even have to read. This is just different things I went, and all of this stuff is related specifically to the entrepreneur's journey, small business owners, and their links to ADHD, which is really interesting. And there used to be an ADD and an ADHD, and now it's all ADHD, which is interesting. But there's still two different categories, right? There's one that's primarily inattentive, and one primarily hyperactive, right? So there's and those are the two distinctions between those two. And it was really interesting, and that's kind of what I want to get into a little bit today. And just share with you some of this research, because I just thought this was absolutely fascinating, because it really was just, as I was going through this stuff, I was like, holy crap. And I've certainly had my struggles with ADHD growing up, and certainly I was never, I mean, I'm in my 50s. So you got to keep in mind that there was no such thing as ADHD back then. It was just, oh, you're just hyper, right? He's a hyperactive kid. And this kid, we all knew those kids that were bouncing off the walls. I wasn't necessarily a kid that was bouncing off the walls, but I certainly had my fair share of being inattentive. So so where you've got that inattentive side or that impulsive side. That's basically the way that they broke this down. And a really good resource for those of you who may be struggling. This is a really good book. As you can see, I've got it all tabbed up here. Let me go ahead and share this here. You can see that book there, ADHD 2.0. Obviously, I've read it. I've read all different aspects of this book, and it's written by two medical doctors, Edward Hollowell and John Ratey, Ratey. Someone's asking to see it again, so let me put that back up again. But this book right here, ADHD 2.0, and mercifully, this book is short. So for those of you who may be struggling with ADHD a little bit, you're thinking, how in the world am I going to sit down and actually read a book if I can't focus? Well, there is actually, it's an interesting thing, because one of the things that I have noticed is that people with ADHD tend to focus on the things that they're very interested in. In fact, they called it, and they referenced it as hyperfocus. So it's just interesting that business owners, especially those who tend to hyperfocus, can do really well at researching the things that they need to research as they head into business, right? And that's not a bad thing. And so there's a couple things in this research here, and this is the name of the research is the role of distinct ADHD symptoms for pre-entry into entrepreneurial behavior. So they've always got long titles on these things, right? And mercifully, I will tell you that one of the things that really frustrates the bejesus out of me about being in a being in the PhD program is I'm reading most of these things, which takes me like an Oxford dictionary to understand like one sentence at a time. Thankfully, this was not written that way. This was actually written in pretty normal English. But the interesting thing that I found and that I learned about this was there's the two distinct types of ADHD, right? There's one that's primarily inattentive and the one that's primarily impulsive. So this was the interesting link about this, is that the thing with the impulsive side is that generally they don't have trouble taking action. They don't generally have trouble taking action, which should not surprise you. So for those of you who maybe have that Roger Rabbit, jumping around trying to just get all sorts of things done all at one time, that's pretty common for those who have ADHD, primarily, primarily impulsive. And so you guys don't have trouble taking action. You guys are the type that generally jump out of the airplane and then build the parachute on the way down. Does that sound familiar? Right. So that is, so that's basically it. Someone's got a question up there. Sorry, I can't see that. Is it real bad? Sorry, I can't. Sorry, let me move that over. I'm having trouble. Sorry, I am in full denial that I need glasses. And these things that are written up here, is it a real book? It's a real book. It might be available on ebook. I know that you're asking, so that I don't know. I think it probably would be available on ebook. I don't know if it's on Audible. I imagine because again, it is actually a pretty easy read. But I will tell you again, I probably suffer with the more, again, the book that he's asking about is this book here, and I'll put it back up again on the other screen so you guys can see it here in just a second. But it is really, really good because there's going to be something related to something called RSD, and that's rejection sensitive dysphoria, and that's pretty common with folks who have ADHD, primarily inattentive. And that is where a lot of the problem lies with people who have ADHD. And it's not that they can't get things going, right? It's not that they have trouble with the research, is they actually have trouble taking action. And that's something that I have seen quite often with people who I ended up working with, back when I was doing just simple coaching, and now I'm obviously doing more strategy work. But that lack of accountability and just getting ready to get ready, that is a real problem for people with ADHD, primarily inattentive. So those are the people who have, again, the attention problems, where versus the others have the impulsive problems. One of the things in this research that I actually did not know is that the ADHD types, again, you can have both types, just like there's people who had ADD and ADHD. Well, this is the same thing, right? You can have both inattentive and impulsive. But the interesting thing is that I did not realize that the people who have mostly inattentive, actually, there's slightly more of those of the ADHD population. So there's actually 60% of the ADHD population that are primarily inattentive. Well, and these are the people who will tend to, they tend to be very sensitive, and they tend to have like these creeping feelings of dread, and then this thing called RSD, which is rejection sensitive dysphoria. Rejection sensitive dysphoria is this tendency to ruminate on things that may have happened, especially in social situations, like ruminating about, like, why did that person say that word in that way, and then think about it for the next 3 days, right? And I will tell you that was a real problem for me, because again, feelings of self-worth, low self-worth, and worthlessness and things like that was things I definitely dealt with at one point in time. Not so much now, but with some good inner work and constant vigilance. I mean, that's the sort of stuff that you got to work through, right? And this is really interesting, that as I was reading through this research, I was like looking through these pages, like, holy crap, this is the stuff that I used to deal with, where I would spend hours and hours and hours and days and days and days pulling all this research and then not take any action on it. So how could that relate to an issue if someone has a problem selling? Could that potentially be a problem if someone's selling? I could see that definitely being more of a problem for someone who is, again, primarily inattentive, where they're going to have that rejection sensitivity that someone who's impulsive probably wouldn't. Okay, now, does it mean that we should all be more impulsive just so we can take more action? No, generally there's problems with that too. Is that, again, that jumping out of the airplane and building the parachute on the way down, that has its own set of problems, because that means a lot of times people are, acting, not really thinking through all the consequences, and really, is that the best action that you should be taking? Are you taking a real strategic action? So it was really interesting, just this whole body of research. So again, if you're just joining me, we're talking about sales, entrepreneurship, and ADHD, and just a whole array of, these are 15 independent studies that I was reading. Unfortunately, which is actually kind of funny, not funny, but there was a lot of research that had been done, and this is all research that had been done in the last, most of it's been done in the last 5 years. I think there was one that was done in 2013, and that they had to actually retract that one because they couldn't replicate a certain study. So in order for it to remain peer reviewed, they have to try to replicate certain things, I guess. But anyway, there's certain standards that they have to follow, which is great. Books like this, these are, more in the popular press, but it was written by 2 medical doctors. And interestingly enough, Hollowell, who wrote this book, was actually referenced in this research that I found in this peer-reviewed journal. So the interesting thing about all of this is I work with quite a few people who end up struggling with ADHD, who tend to be entrepreneurs, and they tend to be very, very creative folks. They tend to be very, very hardworking, and almost to the point of obsession, where it can be really not necessarily a great thing that they're spending so much time at work, because they're getting into that hyper focus mode, or they're again jumping out of the airplane without a parachute. So there's some things that you can do for sure that actually that is backed up by science and data. And I've done a fair amount of research on ADHD. And I'm not going to make this exactly all about ADHD tonight, but the things that you can do to work around that. But I will tell you that knowing about the RSD, the rejection sensitive dysphoria, the interesting thing about that, and I actually have it tabbed here in the book, but the interesting thing about rejection sensitive dysphoria is it is pretty common among those people with ADHD. And it's again, it can cause severe emotional or extreme emotional pain triggered by the perception, real or imposed, that a person has been rejected, ridiculed, or criticized by important people in their life. And if you were on the call last night, that ability to set aside ridicule is really, really important as you're putting out your personal vision and your business vision. We mostly talked about business vision last night, but that is really, really important, because if you're going to be worried and you're not going to be willing to set aside the potential for ridicule, you're never going to take any action. Last night, interestingly enough, one of the channels that I was broadcasting on, the sound wasn't working. And I was like, hey, can you guys hear me? And no one was typing anything, which is pretty typical because I think people are watching on their phones and it's hard to type. So, but no one was saying anything. And it was funny because one of my followers who has my cell phone was like blowing me up. And I'm like, what the heck? And then finally I realized that after a while that they couldn't hear. So I ended up with like 40 minutes of broadcast on one channel that no one could hear anything. So I ended up rebroadcasting it, and that you can get spanked on. The internet gods do not like that when you're broadcasting back to back like that, I guess. Anyway, I didn't realize that. Well, yeah, did I look foolish? I'm sure of it, right? Did I care? No, because this is where volume can save the day. This is where stepping in, just getting your reps in, doing as much as you possibly can. And don't worry about all the stuff that you've done potentially wrong in the past. That doesn't define you. Last night is a blip on the radar, and you can't worry about looking silly. You can't worry about looking foolish. You just got to keep moving forward. And here's the interesting thing about rejection sensitive dysphoria. And if you have ADHD or you recognize the struggle with rejection, is I heard a really cool. It was actually in, I believe it was written in the book. It might have been The Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort. I don't remember exactly where I read this. It might have been actually sales. I think it might have been. So Dan Kennedy wrote a book on sales success, and it might have been in there. And it was really, really good. In fact, it was in there. That's where I read it. So Dan Kennedy wrote a book. I think it's called No BS Sales Success, I think is what it's called. And Dan Kennedy, if you've not heard about him, he is an absolute sage. The guy is an absolute genius when it comes to marketing and business. I've read probably half his books, and that's saying something because he's got like 25 books. So I've read a lot of his stuff. And one of the things that he suggests is to swap the word rejection for refusal. And I really, really like that. I think that refusal is not rejection. Refusal is just saying no to your product, service, or your sale. Rejection is about you. Refusal is about the sale. Refusal is about the item. And it doesn't have anything to do with you. So I thought that was a really cool way to do that. But the thing is, too, is that when it comes to rejection sensitive dysphoria, especially those where rejection sensitive dysphoria is tied specifically to those who have inattentive ADHD, that's pretty common, is just the knowledge of knowing that RSD is a thing actually can help you set it aside. I thought that was pretty cool. Just knowing about it, just knowing that RSD is a thing actually can help you set that aside. I thought that was really, really cool. So I really would encourage you. I'll put this book back up on the screen again, and we'll let's see. Got some questions up there. Hang on one hot second. So that's the book right there, ADHD 2.0 by both medical doctors, Edward Hollowell and John Rady. So again, I'm really, really enjoyed the book. I had a really, really good, I learned a ton from that. And the interesting thing about that is, as I was reading that research, like I had mentioned earlier, about the role of entrepreneurship and the two different types of ADHD, right? The inattentive and impulsive, how that played out in these entrepreneurs as they were gearing up to get ready. And it wasn't really a surprise that the ones who are impulsive actually took action. I thought that was pretty straightforward. The ones who were inattentive, they struggled. They tend to hyper focus on their research, but they would fail to take action. So, and think about that for just a second. We'll put the fries in the bag here for just a second, but think about that as you are, when you have a, I'll just say this. I have been in many courses, many classrooms, many seminars, specifically seminars where the person was selling something in the front of the room, and they had some course or some program or whatever, and I bought, I don't even know, well over $100,000 worth of courses in my lifetime, probably close to $500,000. I mean, it's been a lot, and some of them never even made it out of the wrapper. So I don't know if anybody of you can relate to that, but that is something that that I had a problem with, just buying more and more courses. But the interesting thing about that is, it's so funny that when you look at the people who did these courses and the people that really took action and really leaned in and really got results versus the people who you thought had every reason to succeed but didn't. And it makes me wonder how many of those folks were struggling with these types of issues, you know, not just the individual, not just the personal psychology, but specifically with ADHD. It kind of makes me wonder. So, well, that is all I have for this evening. I hope you guys are, you've got some cool plans coming up for the week. And I'm actually, I've got a busy week coming up. For those of you who are interested, I've got several sessions coming up on Eventbrite. If you'd like to check on that, head over to Eventbrite and just look for Strategic Boardroom. I've got 2 classes on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, 1 on Wednesday, and another one on Friday. And all different topics. They're 100% free. If you would like, if you're looking for something a little bit more guided, you can head on over to to our school, our community, which is school.com/strategic boardroom. So that is everything I've got for tonight, guys. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you guys next time.